right, and we are live. Hello and welcome. Oh, there's a mistake. There we go. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
Together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
Not only that, but we founded the company, so we've got that going for us too. We will be your hosts for this episode and every episode.
Unless, of course, we're not.
Right. Today is our third episode.
Hopefully also not our last.
This again, why would it be our last?
Oh, we might get canceled.
Why would we get canceled?
Another show on the channel could be doing better in our time slot.
But we're the only show that's on this time slot.
It's still something we should be worried about.
Let's just move on.
All right, then.
We are here to answer development and design questions, specifically on Idle Champions, but if you ask us about some of our other games, we'll probably answer those too.
And if you don't have any questions to ask, and if you saw the earlier episodes, then you'll know that this time you'll have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of, really? You're going to do Jedi?
Return of the Jedi, baby.
Really? All right.
I don't think we've got, I guess we have a couple of updates here from the team that we can mention. There's been some fixes on the baby snowy owlbear pricing. I'm not sure what that's, I think that has to do with the retirement sale that's going on now in game. And there were some other familiars that came out on Wednesday that there may have been some temporary issues with. All that is fixed up and good to go now.
See, I read that as there was price fixing for the baby snow owlbear. So,
yes, horrible price fixing thing. But yeah, that's all fixed up now. So good. There's also some CNE folks are going to be on the Siren stream on Saturday, and there's a Twitter link for that that maybe one of the mods can share in stream. I'll just post it into our channel there. And there's also, what else? I think we're doing a giveaway at some point during this stream, so just keep your eye on chat for that. And I think that's pretty much it.
Great. All right. Well, let's hop over to the questions then. We got a couple from last time that we hung on to because we thought they were worth answering. I've got a real easy one here, and we've seen this one come up a number of times, people asking about the tavern background, the one that's behind Justin. And that background, which I didn't have the link handy for last stream, is actually done by one of our artists, Michelle, and it's actually available on her Twitter. And I'm just going to drop that link into the chat for people who are interested. Hopefully I can chat. Oh, there we go. Yes, I can. Last time I tried to do this.
Nope.
Nope.
No, it's start it. You are not permitted.
Oh, well,
post
somebody better
links.
post that. That's what I thought. I will just drop that in the channel then, or one of our mods can post that here. This is the link for the art. Someone will share that shortly, I hope.
Yes, hopefully.
No link just for devs. Yep, that's the...
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good idea to follow a lot of our artists on Twitter. We've got some good stuff going out there. I know Michelle posts stuff. Ivy posts stuff. She posts some fan art from I think the stream that our artists do, the Scribbleless stream, the one that's on Wednesday in this time slot.
Yes, they do.
Sketching hour. That's what it's called. Haha.
Okay.
There's another question.
Yep. Sure.
Here,
so
actually,
another question that was left over from last time was asking about the drop rate for time gate pieces. And the question is, what is the drop rate after the 5-day timer? And is there a way that you can increase your chances of getting one?
Yeah, I think, I haven't looked at this in a while, but I think it's just a 5% chance. And it's from every first boss kill. So it's really just designed so that you'll get it pretty quickly. If you're clearing to area 100, that gives you something like a 70% chance to get it within 100 areas. And as you get towards 200 areas, it gets pretty close to 99%. Of course, it's just a random number, so you never know. But after 5 days, you should get one pretty quickly. There's no way to increase that, I don't think. And we probably wouldn't include a way to increase that because it's already a pretty high chance. And the difference between like a 1 in 10 and a 1 in 20 isn't going to be much in the long run.
Right. All right. Looks like questions are just flooding in.
We're starting to get a lot of tech questions here.
Yeah. Well, there is a question. Oh, have we got our wires crossed on our colors here, Justin?
I'm green, aren't I?
Yep, should be. All right. Well, we'll start with this green tech question then.
That's fine.
Are there? Let's see. No, I'm gonna butcher the names because that is tradition. So Flesner166 asks, are there any plans for some sort of pity, oops, darn it timer for Shandy, rolling through levels with 1-click damage, killing mobs, having her turn off because of some valiant ranged mob through a Hail Mary? Seems a bit off.
Yeah, this is good. I think it's Flenser. I think you swapped the S and the N around.
It's tradition to butcher the
name. Yeah, so this is a good question. It is something that we considered when we released Shandy, about sort of what specifically should cause her to turn off, and whether a valiant range mob somehow. It generally only happens when like a bunch of mobs spawn at once and the range is at the back and your click just doesn't quite get back to them before they shoot. Or your click isn't killing them in one go. Normally, if your click is killing them in one go, they won't get a chance to shoot. But it's certainly possible. It's something we thought about, and I can't quite remember why we decided not to put that feature in there. Give her basically like if you get hit once, as long as you don't get hit again in the next little bit. Maybe it was just that we couldn't find a good heuristic for it. Because it's like there's some cases where just getting hit once, you definitely want it to turn off because it makes sense. And there's some cases where getting hit once, you wouldn't want it to get it turn off. So maybe it's like a ranged versus melee thing. I don't know. It's something we can think about. And if anyone has any suggestions on how we would do that, then sort of what heuristic we would use, then go ahead and post them. And I'll see if I can catch them as they scroll by in chat.
Yeah. I mean, that to me feels like just an extra complication that we missed in the original design. So,
yeah, I've got a question here for you. You picked this one just because of the person's name, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, it's from Dr. Zeke. Let's say it's Dr. Zeke. They say, currently, if you save a formation, specific familiars are saved to that formation. So if you want to load that save formation and you use those familiars in some other party, no familiar will load in their place. Is it possible to change the game mechanics so that when you load a formation and have any available familiars, the familiar loader will use any available familiars instead of specifically the saved ones? And I reconfigured that question a little bit, but that's basically what they were asking.
Yeah. Is that... Sorry, I saw this question last time, and I actually meant to go confirm that that's the behavior, because it doesn't actually sound like it should be the behavior.
It definitely shouldn't be the behavior, but my understanding, unless we have fixed that, then that is, as far as I understand, the behavior.
I know when we were putting together the behavior for the Modron automation portion, when it is putting the formations in, it will grab a random familiar if there isn't one available. So I'm concerned that this should have been working in the same way. So yeah, I think we should confirm that, but it absolutely should. First prioritize the one that you've put there, because I know certainly players pick ones, especially the ones on the main field that they like, and then if it can't get that one, if it can't prioritize that one, then pick any available one. So yeah, I wonder if the formation has too many familiars in it, if at first it fills all the slots that it can, and then it goes back to fill in the ones, because otherwise you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you're stealing from the ones that would later be placed. And so the moment you do that, all of them would be out of whack. Because I think the behavior was intended to place as many as possible that match and then go in and fill them in. But if that's not the behavior that's occurring, we should fix it to be that. That's because that's what it should be.
Yeah. I kind of feel like what happens is if it can't pull one, it just kind of stops. Like really? Filling in familiars.
Really?
That bug might have gotten fixed. I know. I I've just kind of let my formations go at it, and I haven't really changed them all that much. So I don't know if this has been fixed, because I got my save formations to use different familiars. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I agree. It definitely should work the way that Dr. ZK is saying it should, or asking for it to.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. Here's a question that's now I'm confused. It's labeled as tech, but it's highlighted green.
Well, I'm just taking some of the tech ones for you.
Oh. All right. OG17 asks, Mahen's Grumpy Formation buff tab description says he loses stacks based on events involving the trio. I don't think events is made less vague anywhere in game. Could it be given the same information Mahen's blog Spotlight has?
Yeah, I think definitely it could be. I flagged this question because it's kind of one of the bigger parts of champion design at this point, because champions are getting so complex, is specifically how we describe them in game, such that you don't have to read basically a novel in order to understand how the champion works at a high level. And so getting descriptions to be just right is a very, very challenging thing. There's actually a champion coming up that I just went a little bit nuts with, in terms of, I don't even know how the team's going to do the description for their first ability. But so it's something that's really challenging, and we try and get as much information as we can in there. Sometimes we miss an important piece of information. So if there's some stuff we can improve with Mahen, then I think that's definitely something we can look at improving. And I'm just going to highlight that so I can go back and make a note to talk to Peter about it afterwards. Yeah, let's see if I got a question here for you, Dave. Here's one from Terra1. They ask, will there be real 4K scaling support in the future?
Well, that's a bit of a cheeky question. Is it real 4K scaling?
Yeah, not that fake 4K scaling where you just scale everything up linearly.
Yeah, right. That's a good question, and it's also a good reminder as more and more people do end up with 4K monitors. For now, the answer is, the answer right now is not right now, but potentially in the future. I think the easiest thing to do, and we should probably have provide some kind of instructions for this, is to make sure that the window scaling is upscaling the game. But the issue, or sort of an underlying bit of this, is that the game's art assets are all designed for 1080p, and so all the backgrounds, all the characters are like 100% size at 1080p. And we have run into some issues when trying to scale up in terms of just font sizes and other layout issues. So generally speaking, the best way to scale it up is literally just to scale the whole window, because all the assets are designed for 1080p. But it does need more thought. It's something I'd like to see it support, but it's certainly been on the back burner compared to some of the more tech and content update stuff. But hopefully at some point. All right. We've got a question here for you, Justin, from Flashing Zeros. The time gate menu gives the option to sort champions by popularity. How is this calculated? Is this the number of players who've unlocked the champion, the average eye level, or something else?
Yeah, so it's actually very simple. It's just the number of players who have opened a time gate with that champion, I think in the last week or 2 weeks. So it's literally just their popularity in time gates. So you could go the loading 99 Google phones onto a wagon and dragging it across a bridge thing to affect that if you really wanted to, and you had a whole bunch of time gate pieces. You just open. So I look forward to seeing players now manipulate that.
Yeah, okay.
In which case we will change it to something else.
Where would you get 100 Google phones, though? That's a fair question.
Let's see, we've got a question here for you from Gleaser, who asks, can you change the name of the EXE from Idle Champions or the Windows name so that the Steam and Epic version have different names? It's a real pain for streamers.
I'd like to have more details on that, I guess, would be my question.
Is it because when you're trying to like select the right window,
it shows up as the same if you're trying to stream from both? Same? Yeah. I wonder
Garwar confirms that it is a pain for streamers.
Okay. But I'd love to see the details on that. Maybe there's another way around that. I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't change the name of the executable.
Would it run from the Epic store?
I mean, I think I think it should. I'm going to have to check, but I think if you just renamed it and then opened it from just directly rather than opening it from in the client or like from in the Epic's launcher or the Steam launcher, that it should run. I mean, I know the Steam one certainly will run with whatever name you give it.
But then it probably wouldn't load the overlay though, would it?
I'm not 100% sure. I think I don't know. I'd have to check. Testing would be required. I've never tried that and then tried to open the Steam overlay or the Epic overlay.
Henry Loneman says in chat that the Epic version doesn't run when you just run the exe. So there must be something that gets injected by the platform that helps that to run.
I'm so tempted to try right now, but probably not the best moment.
No, definitely not. Yeah, and it sounds like maybe when you in some streaming software it will only show one, even if there's like two windows open or something like that, or just kind of picks one at random.
No,
I don't know.
That can't be the case. All right. Well,
anyway,
it sounds like Garwar knows about it, so he can give us some additional details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I got a bunch of questions here that I've highlighted for me.
So you just want this whole block. I mean, all right.
All the tech ones too. That's right.
All right. Starting with Cassius 335. The question I forgot to ask last week. Is there any chance you guys could recode Overwhelm so that after 100 Overwhelm or so the party auto wipes? Wait a minute. I'm trying to...
No, I think this is actually asking about once 100 enemies are attacking a player.
Sorry, I read it wrong. It's not Overwhelm or so. It's after about 100 Overwhelm or so, the party auto wipes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So actually, I mean, fun fact, the maximum number of enemies that can be on the screen is actually 100. So it can't be more than 100 Overwhelm and the party auto wipes, or else it would never auto wipe. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I mean, the way in like an amazing world, in a perfect world, the health and tanking and that sort of stuff would be perfectly balanced, such that once you kind of, there's not really a possibility for a single champion to tank 100 enemies at once. But it's not a perfect world. It's a very difficult thing to balance, especially when you've got, the difference between loot levels. Someone could have 10 or even 100 times as much health as someone else. So Ojit asks, when would you want to wipe? Well, it's not when you guys want to wipe, it's when I want your party to wipe. But yeah, I mean, I don't really want to have your party like just auto wipe as soon as a certain number of enemies are spawned on the screen. It kind of defeats the purpose of having tanky champions and having healing and having that stuff allow you to get really far. With that said, as many people have noted in chat, there is an enrage that happens once you max out the enemies on the screen. So it's, I guess we could speed up that enrage to maybe if you're fighting 100 enemies, that you have to wipe them out pretty quickly, or else that enrage will stack up and eventually wipe you at different times based on where your gear is at. But yeah, there's probably not an auto wipe, but certainly we could look at the behavior. I mean, the cheeky joke is just that once you get 100 enemies on screen, it's just a matter of time until the client crashes. But
whoa.
I think we've actually fixed that. That used to be true, and it's true if you like go into that level with all the fire enemies. Remember those fire elementals from the tutorial?
Remember the fire elementals? They had like 1,000 little component pieces. Shame the artist who did that.
That was bad times.
Yeah. Sort of a pathological design choice on the way that was animated.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do another one for me, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I've got a couple
one?
here I flagged that were more discussion type questions.
Ooh, I see some purple ones.
Yep. So, and this one's sort of a cheeky question in some regards. General Rhinosaur 01 asks, have you discussed...
General is the
Oh, yeah. Well, I've promoted General. I've promoted Rhinosaur to General. So
congratulations, Rhinosaur.
If you're listening, you're now General Rhinosaur. Have you discussed adding social systems like guilds, factions, or any kind of social community goals or bonuses?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Does that sound like something that we would add?
So I guess there's sort of two sides to this. One is like, for the most part, Idle Champions is a single player game, and you make your single player process or progress, and you can compare yourself to your friends and whatnot, but it's not really super pertinent. It doesn't affect your progress, what other people's progress is. And so on the one side, adding something like guilds or factions, or something where players are competing with each other in some way, it goes a little bit about sort of how the game has the sort of design philosophy for the game. With that said, we are actually planning on adding some cooperative gameplay modes this year. That being the cooperative multiplayer feature that we talked about in our end of year blog last year. And
do you have a date for that?
I do, but we might not hit it, so I'm not going to say it.
Primary reason why we don't give dates.
We are working on it. I know we had an update about it today, and we were behind where we wanted to be for today. Thanks, COVID. But hopefully we can catch up and get it out on time.
Yeah, it's definitely a priority for us. So good progress is being made. And then I had another one that I also flagged as more of a discussion question. Or sort of
this one here.
What is the correct answer for this? So the Mickey asks, and it's not General the Mickey, it's all right. As a follow-up to the familiar load question from earlier, if loading a save formation which contains a champion who is currently in another formation, it asks if the champion should be recalled to the current formation. If you answer yes, the champions loads the rest of the formation with the correct slots, but with the champions that last have been used in those slots instead of the ones that are in the saved formation. Is this intended? That doesn't sound like it's intended.
To me, that doesn't sound intended.
Yep. Oh, you just glitched out there.
I've been signed out. What the heck?
Oh, well, your video's still here, so you're good. Carry on.
Huh.
Oh,
what the heck? Oh, am I still here?
You're still here.
All right.
You lost your background for a second.
Signed into Zoom on another. I don't understand. I don't understand technology. That's why I answer the design questions. But yeah, that doesn't sound intentional to me. That sounds like a bug of some sort. It sounds like something's accepting, throwing an exception there in the middle of loading the formation.
It's odd if it then carries on to replace the champions with the characters that were there last in the slots.
Yeah, that's very. I mean, there is sort of some default functionality in the game to like when you level up champions after resetting, that they are supposed to go into the slots they were in last time. I don't know if that 100% works properly, and that might be what's getting hit in this case here. So,
all right, I'm gonna highlight that, and someone can check that after, because that is really odd behavior.
That is very strange. That sounds kind of buggy.
All right. Well, I'm going to scroll back up and go on to another question for you here, Justin.
Sure.
We've got Giant Dwarf asking, with Shaka's puzzle and his tags, Arkhan's long overdue to get a gold tag. With the gold tag possibly landing in the front line, I think we should have at least one legitimate champ to be there for the entire duration of the run.
Yeah, that is a fair question. I think we can. I think we can do that. I'm trying to think of if there's any sort of reason we would have held off on doing a gold tag, or if it just got missed when we added gold find to him in his initial rework. Um, I think it probably just got missed, and we haven't gone back. There's actually a follow-up question here from Giant Dwarf, a couple down. It says there are very few gold tagged champions, and several that arguably should be tagged as such. And I believe that may be true. So that might be something that we can go through and just quickly do as a little kind of, I don't know if it's super a buff, but because I don't think there's a lot of stuff that interfaces with gold find champions, like buffs based on the number of gold find champions. Maybe like I don't even know if there are any abilities that use that. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Chat will no doubt correct me. Sorry, I'm just reading some of the chat there. Okay. Let's find a question for Dave.
All right.
Let's see here. Yes, here's a blue question from Fredzilla. Is there a way to turn off just the familiar attack sounds, or any plans to do so?
Yeah, we get this question so frequently at this point. I'm also going to highlight this and say we should just put that in.
It does sound like an option that we should put in.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely one of those ones that we've been asked. Yeah, I've lost track. So, so yeah, I'm gonna prioritize that and see if we can't get that taken care of.
Yeah, I think that's also. I think part of the reason that we probably have leaned away from that in the past has just been because the settings dialogue is getting egregious. So it might be time to, as a sort of wider job, take a look at that settings
tabs
dialogue.
On the dialogue, are you?
I'm thinking like tabs or like
pages.
I think once
should
we
it
had
scroll?
Once we had multiple like pages of settings and stuff, I think that's when we become. I think that gives us an extra A. Like I think we go from like A to AA or AA to AAA, depending on how many pages of settings we have. So I'm content to graduate to whatever the next tier is
of having too many settings.
That's right.
Yeah.
Too many settings.
Too many settings.
Then we tell people, oh yeah, you can just change that in the settings, and then they're digging through like 6 pages of settings trying to find it. And of course, like the sound one to turn off the familiar clicking is actually under the general gameplay settings, and so
no, you have to actually go turn it off manually in the JSON settings file that's in the user data /roaming asset /unity /codename entertainment. I know, no, really, it's probably already there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, scrolling all the way back up here to a nice green question.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, and they're not a general.
They might be. You never know.
Juvent A. Shalone. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to need phonetic pronunciations of these just added, I think.
Yeah, if people could just include the phonetic pronunciation of your name in front of your question, that would be great.
What is the definition of loot level for unlocking patrons?
Sure. So I think there's one of the patrons, I'm not sure if it's Mert or Vajra, requires a certain, you have to have a certain total loot level. I think it's 2,000 total loot levels across all your champions. And loot levels are gained when you get duplicate loot. So they go up, and the loot level for unlocking patrons is basically just you have to have that many loot levels in total across all of your gear for all your champions. And you can get them, as I said, you can get them from getting duplicate loot in chests. You can also get them by using blacksmithing contracts on champions to increase their loot level. So, that is something that is not perfectly clear anywhere, and it's kind of something that we don't really highlight anywhere in the game, especially your total loot levels or like your average loot level per character or anything like that. They're also called item levels as well. Though there is a feature coming up where your item levels will be pertinent, so we may have to call that out a little bit better in the future. Let's see if we can find another question.
Just put it as
for
like
Dave.
a single number with no identifier next to a portrait.
Well, I mean,
who would do that?
That's the way we would do it. Here's a question from General Kill Them All. Can you get champions without buying them?
Sorry, I don't know why I'm browsing for the question, because I just go off what you just asked, and that answer is yes. The general design consensus of the game is that every champion is available through means in the game. So whether that is playing during their specific event, or whether that's opening up a time gate so that you can get them that way, or whether they're a specific champion that unlocks due to completing a specific set of adventures, every champion is available in-game through gameplay rather than having to purchase them.
That is true. It's not 100% true in Crusaders, though. Amusingly enough, there are some champions that you can only get by donating to charity. So,
well, I was going to
do something like that in this game.
Fair enough. I thought you were gonna have a gotcha moment there of like, yep, we're better. Oh, wait, maybe not.
No, I believe every single champion so far. Let me think about that. Yes, it is true right now.
We're not
and it will be true.
That,
actually, no,
I didn't think we were changing that.
No, I was thinking about a thing coming up, but it's not a paid thing, so you're all good.
Great. All right. Another question for you, Justin. We've got SNE Sneejock. See, I read that initially as having an S in there, so it was SNES Jock, but nope. Sneejock. Question: are you going to fix DPS breakdown to show correct DPS and not maximum possible?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I like to answer questions like this because the DPS breakdown that we show and Bud and all that stuff is super duper complicated. We actually changed. We used to show a more accurate DPS that was sort of, well, accurate, quote unquote. It was based off of your damage in the last several seconds. But the problem is that it bounced around like mad. Because you can have, like, if your champions hit something that have a debuff on them, they'll do a lot more damage. And then if the next thing they hit doesn't have that debuff on them, they could do 4 orders of magnitude less damage. And what happens then to a sort of a real DPS number is it just jumps around, and it's really hard to actually tell like what is your number that you're doing, so you can compare it to other people, so you can compare it to what you were doing before, etc. And we really want that number there to stay fairly static, because we want it to only really respond to actions that you take, like swapping 2 champions in the formation, leveling up a champion, getting an upgrade, putting a different champion in, etc. So that number there is kind of it's not really your maximum DPS possible, because it doesn't necessarily take into account, like, if you were to get 100 stacks of something on a champion versus having sort of a more average number of stacks, like 20 or 30. We try to kind of make it kind of an average number for what we think your DPS is kind of capable of. So, I mean, if you want to get a sort of more accurate number of like sort of your max DPS the last little while, that's kind of what the Bud is for. That'll be your biggest hit that you've done in the last minute or so, and then it gets reduced after that. Might get reduced after 30 seconds. I'm not sure where we landed on that.
It ticks
so
down,
that's
right?
that's
Just
sort of
gradually.
It gradually ticks down over time. So if you get like just a really lucky hit that does like multiple orders of magnitude higher than you'd normally do, you'll get that as your Bud. That'll affect how much damage your ultimates do. That'll affect how much damage fire breath potions do. But then it will sort of slowly tick down and get it until it gets back to the same damage you were doing before. But yeah, that's kind of a long-winded way to say the DPS breakdown is very hard to get accurate, and so it's very hard to figure out what the proper value is there in order to fix it.
Yeah, no, getting a proper measure of any champion's power was super, super hard. It was something I spent a substantial amount of time on about a year and a half ago. Was sort of the complete rework of that, which created an enormous amount of questions about. It's a lot better now, and we know it because we get a lot less questions about that number, because the number we had before just didn't accurately portray what was going on, and was actually fairly confusing. All right.
Here's a question here for you, Dave, that we can talk about. We've actually Or do you want to? I guess you've marked this purple.
I marked it as purple. So I was like, are we sharing this information?
So we kind of hinted at this last week. I don't think we've announced anything official, and so we could mention that it's something that
I don't think this is
is coming. So Cleo asks, hello, is it possible to make a mechanism for creating fan localizations, at least a simple file dictionary with translated strings or translation strings?
So that's a pretty complicated, it's a complicated question, or rather it's a complicated process to actually put in all the mechanisms to have the game be localized. And then when you have a file dictionary with translated strings, we do end up with, what was the count we ended up with? Like,
there are 56,000 strings and 600 and something thousand words in the game.
Yeah. And there's a reason. Big. There's a good reason that we know that, and that is that this is something we're looking into ourselves. So we don't have a date on it at this point, but we are looking to get that done, and at some point we'll get that out. And when we do, if there are languages that are not the language that you're looking for, then we can look further into that. But the actual process of making the game localizable, adding in all the strings, or basically going through and annotating every location that has different strings is a huge endeavor, and it is an ongoing one.
Yeah, it's especially challenging around the effects system, right? Which is a lot of different strings kind of added together and concatenated in funky ways that doesn't really make it super easy to translate it, right? Because you could have something in English that's like, this ability does 100% more damage. And so it's like this ability does, and then plus 100%, and then a separate string that's like more damage. And, that may not be the way that string fits together in another language. That may not be, it might not be 2 pieces. It might be 3 pieces. It might be just 1 piece. It becomes very complicated. And so there's a lot of things we have to adjust in the code to make it work, right?
Yeah. Not to mention that chest description.
Yes, the chest descriptions, which are just completely constructed out of the content of them. Well, they were. Not so much so anymore.
Well, hopefully Alex found a solution to that. We left him with some ideas, and I don't know that we checked back in on it.
Here's another. I've got the next one for me is a pretty big one, so I'm going to ask one more for you.
Right, go for it.
The Real Bunny Beast, also now a general. Congratulations. Do you track how many people use scientific notation versus non-scientific? And if so, can you share the numbers?
So the answer to that is yes. Yes, we do track how many people, not as a directly like we're tracking that, but more so that that is one of the game settings that we store on your account on the server. So I can look that number up, and I don't have the numbers on hand right this second, but what I can do is flag this, and we will answer that on the next stream.
Oh yes, so show up for that next stream, everyone, if you want to know how many people use scientific notation versus not. I mean, this is the hot button issue that everyone tuned in
engineering
to find
notation is the hot button issue. That's the one that, that gets
God,
flagged.
not engineering notation, no.
Okay.
Just switch it to emoji notation. How many smiley faces in a frowny face?
7.
That should be our April Fool's joke next year.
Replace it with smiley face or emoji notation.
Emoji notation.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's built out already. Like someone's actually done that. Someone's probably done like a master's thesis on that, I bet.
I think for sentences, but not necessarily for the numbers. Like we don't have you've got 16, smirks. Like how many? Is that?
It's 16e to the lit flame.
Yeah. But to the devil horns.
Yeah.
All right. Which one were you looking at, Justin? You want
this one right up here. Way up. Look all the way up.
I see it. Question 14.
Friendly giant.
Wow. I screwed this name up last time too.
Just get the right number of S's and F's.
All right. Spiffy Man asks, thanks for doing this again. Wait, that's not a question. Can you give us a rough step-by-step of designing a new champion kit, especially how you go from blank page to fully fleshed out abilities?
This is a great
I don't think
question.
your page starts blank though, right? I think you have like
It actually
it's got
doesn't start blank.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I start out with a little table that I fill out. Um, I meant I really this is one of those questions where if COVID hadn't happened this year, you would have gotten to see at our Extra Life
It's
stream
true.
last year because I had a whole Dev Designs a Champion hour prepared that was going to be super fun. We were going to design. Who were we going to design? We were going to
It was a
design.
joke character of some sort.
It was a joke character. Their name was Human, and then and then I ended up designing it anyway. And some people saw it, and they were like, "Oh, how about we do that?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, well." So you could have seen me design it. Anyway, the that really has nothing to do with answering this question. The answer to this question is a rough step by step. So I guess the first thing we kind of do is we try and figure out their class and race and see if that's going to have anything to do with their design. We start to think about what roles we want the champion to be, whether we want it to be tanking, support, DPS, gold find, whether we want it to be a speed champion, especially is something we want to think about really early in the design. And then sort of after we've got their roles, we try and think about how they're going to succeed at that role, how they're going to be really good at that role. So a tanking champion, we start to think about how are they going to be tanky? How are they going to be different from other tanks? For a support champion, we think about how are they going to buff the formation? Who are they going to buff? How are they going to be? Are there going to be positional formation, positional aspects to their buff? Is there going to be tag-based aspects to their buffs? Are there going to be, gender or race or anything like that? And then we put together basically a design out of that, of their various formation abilities. We try to think about ways that those formation abilities can be customized through specializations. Sometimes, depending on who the champion is and whether it's important or not, we think about their attacks before or after we think about their upgrades. But oftentimes we try and make their attacks synergize with their abilities, especially their ultimate attacks. I guess another thing I should have mentioned here, if we're doing a champion that is based on a streamer or a content creator or someone in the community, the very first thing we will do is have a phone conversation with them or a Zoom conversation with them, and basically we've got a big questionnaire that we just get them to basically answer about who their character is, what defines their character, any defining attacks or spells or equipment that they use, and we use that to start out with the champion. That usually gets us through the first 2 or 3 steps of that of the steps I mentioned earlier, especially what their roles are. Because oftentimes player characters will have a very defined role that they do in their game. They'll be like the damage dealer. They'll be the damage sponge. They'll kind of sit at the back and heal or buff the party or debuff enemies. And so that often determines what kind of roles the characters have. After we've sort of designed out their abilities, I usually give it a day or two and give it a sober second look, make sure I wasn't doing anything ridiculous. And then it goes out to the team where we announce, or we get everyone on the art team and on the dev team onto a call, or once we're back in the office, everyone into a room, God forbid. And we just go over the champion. We talk about their abilities and how they should look and how their attacks should look and their ultimate should look and their equipment and that sort of stuff. And then that goes off and the team works its magic, and eventually it comes back to me and I attempt to balance the champion using some internal tools that we've developed to try and make sure that the numbers are relatively close to other champions. And I think I talked about balancing in either the first or second episode. So if you want to hear a longer answer on that, you can go back and check out those episodes. You think I missed anything, Dave?
I am not entirely sure because I was flagging stuff for both you and for me. This is one of the juggling acts we do here on this one.
We've got a bazillion questions here.
Well,
we've gotten through like 25 questions and there are 78.
Some of these aren't too bad.
Well, let me find one here for you. What do we think? Just go from the top down.
Well, yeah, I saw some good ones while I was going through here. Sure, you can start with 33 and we'll move from there.
Yeah, okay. So Yilmaz Durmaz asks, they have an old laptop that is not an HD display. It's got a 768p height, and the game's 720p windowed mode is the only nicely playable resolution with some part below the taskbar. Please start making progressive window resizing. So I guess they're asking for stuff below 720.
Yeah, and so I mean that's kind of we have sort of a design decision on that one, was that to make sure that we have enough room for all the things that we wanted to fit in, we have we limit ourselves to 720p as the absolute sort of that's the minimum resolution that we decided upon, and it does affect sort of how much information we can get onto dialogues, how the layouts all look, and so unfortunately if you're sort of skirting right at that edge, we just don't technically support below that. I think you might be able to go into the config that I joked about earlier and lower that resolution, but unfortunately some things will end up getting cut off when that happens.
Because all of our dialogues are designed for 720p minimum, right?
Yeah, that's the minimum. And some things can scale up, but we need enough space to fit everything on, unfortunately. And it hits a point where you'd actually start like scaling things down, and then the text starts to get blurry, and so we're sort of working on that minimum size, unfortunately. I appreciate that can be it sucks if you're working on an older display and you're not quite at 720p, but I think though at 768p you probably could go full screen, but I guess that's probably counter to the way that you want to play. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. So I actually flagged some here for you, Justin.
Go for it.
Liberation with a 0 in the end there asks, there are some champion abilities and blessings in-game whose descriptions say they increase DPS by X%. Is this mechanic any different than the ones that say increase damage? If not, why use DPS instead of damage consistently?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's no different. I think it's just an inconsistency. I know I did a pass way back before we released and tried to replace everything with damage, but different developers put in the effect strings, and sometimes DPS slips in there. So there is no difference between the two. They're interchangeable.
You're certain?
And you can.
You're certain on that? That isn't.
I am certain.
Actually have.
Yes.
Okay.
I am certain on that. We do not have any abilities that affect DPS in some other way than damage abilities affect.
Right. And
damage.
Probably context on that is all of the abilities in Crusaders were DPS, and this is description that probably came from that.
It's very possible, yes, because in Crusaders there was just a constant DPS being applied to monsters as they spawned, and in this game, obviously, as your champions leap out, they do individual damage.
Yeah. So it's a holdover because we did evolve tech from Crusaders when we built champions. I got another question here that's going to be fairly straightforward for you, Justin, and that is, do you publish any roadmap about what's upcoming? Asked by Skinny B. Hey, and they phonetically spelled it out for us.
Skinny B.
This is 1981
how you get the question asked. Yes, so we do actually kind of. Generally at the end of each year, we'll post like a year in review. Sometimes we do one around our anniversary as well, which is in September. So take a look out on our blog for posts sort of in the middle of September about sort of the year in review, and at the end of the year. I think it generally publishes the week before the new year.
Right, and it's not a year in review as in it's the upcoming. I think
sorry,
you covered both.
I didn't finish that.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
It's a year in review and a look forward. So the one that we did for January of this year, or for the end of last year, talked about a couple of things. One was the multiplayer feature that we've been hinting at, the cooperative multiplayer feature. I'm not sure I think we talked about legendary items in that as well, and then. What else did we talk about in that? See, I'm trying to remember what we've done this year, but this year just is a blur at this point. So
Yeah, I'd have to bring up the post to see.
But yeah, definitely check that out on the blog. It's like a year retrospective and a look forward, and that would have been posted towards the end of December of last year.
Okay. Now these next two are basically the same questions. Roll those together.
Sure. Yeah. So it's Milev asks, will you add a feature like a simulator so we can project and compare champion teams in-game, leveling them and changing specializations, etc.? They're basically asking, yeah, a champion viewer would be very useful so you can read abilities, stats when other champions from a given slot are fighting, which is a very good point. Will that be added?
Right. Now, we've talked a little bit about this last time, and we actually did start work on a feature like this that ended up being sidelined, and it's a pretty cool feature idea, and it is something that we'd like to look into going forward, but it doesn't have anything, it doesn't have any time laid out for it at this point. So maybe look for it in Justin's September year-end review.
We'll see. Yeah, it can be really challenging to fit some of these kind of nice to have features in that are they're really, really cool and they'd be really awesome to have in game, but it's hard to justify taking dev resources off of like a new feature that everyone can use to like make their champions more powerful, like motor automation, for example, which is actually the reason that this one didn't get done back when we were doing it the first time, is because we were working on motor automation and the pipe game and that kind of stuff that that I think was just more interesting to more people. Not to say that this is not interesting. It's certainly very interesting for me and for people who like to run the numbers. But yeah, it's that kind of developer time triage that we have all the time. Yeah. Here's another one for you, Dave.
Another two, another three. I mean, they just...
there's a bunch. So Dr. Board Game, not a general, he's a doctor, has a question.
Doctor
says, I'm new and just discovered how familiars work. I noticed that you can place a familiar above the alts to cast one randomly. Is there a similar area that they can level a random hero instead of just assigning them to one hero?
Yeah. Short question, short answer. No.
That's not giving me any time to find other questions.
I'm going to make it even worse for you. Is there any reason in your mind, Justin, that we didn't do that?
I think it's I think there's a couple of kind of reasons. One of them being that you can't have all the champions on your bench in the formation, so some of those clicks would probably be wasted. And we don't just want champions like getting leveled up at random, because if you don't have a full formation, they would then get placed in the formation. There's just a bunch of sort of kind of caveats around it that it was just easier not to try to design around them.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Justin. Why don't you grab? We're getting really close to running out of time here. So
oh my gosh,
you grab yourself a couple of questions, and I'm just going to read through these and answer them while you do that.
Sure.
Okay. So we have a text/general question here from BearKitty69, who asks, why is there not a centralized account login rather than having to use a specific launcher / distributor for specific accounts? Wouldn't account details be better served by being able to play on the game platform of choosing and swapping between mobile and desktop and all that? So that's a good question, and certainly it is one that comes up fairly frequently. Sort of, it's the account linking question. Having a centralized account is something that we thought about as a solution to that problem, but it doesn't actually solve the problem of various platforms actually not allowing for that cross-play. Now, some of them do and some of them don't, and it does become a real problem of which accounts you can link and which ones you can't. And then there's other additional complications. I guess that the centralized account login does solve some of the complications that we've talked about in the past between linking an account across, because often when you do an account link, it's like, well, which account is the dominant account? Which account is overriding the existing account? And can you switch back? And what if you do it wrong? Which comes up more often than you would know with Crusaders. But so the centralized account login does solve that particular issue, but it doesn't solve the issue of certain platforms not allowing you to cross-play on that, because what ends up happening is, and this is a platform thing, they don't want you to spend if you're making in-game purchases on someone else's platform and then come play on their platform, and the centralized account login unfortunately would allow that sort of thing, and yeah, so they it's just not allowed on a lot of the platforms because of that. So I agree. It would be that would be a solution, and it would be more convenient, but it's not something that's in our power. Next question is the Coding Monkey asks, is there a plan to disable the black fade in out transition between zones? I want to fix up my formation while progressing. There is not. In fact, while that is happening, things are getting loaded and unloaded and when you switch between zones. And so that we use that little black fade in to handle that transition. So no, that's not something we're going to be able to change. And SNE Jock again asks, it's hard to configure the DPS breakdown. Maybe it's better to disable this feature rather than confuse new players like me. I mean, I think that's one of those things where if it's too hard, yeah. I mean, some things can be confusing at first. It certainly depends on how you approach the game. You know, you've done the right thing by asking us sort of what it means. And I think as the longer you play, the more sense it'll actually make as to what that feature is for. And if it doesn't, and if it's not something that you find useful, yeah, the easiest thing to do is just don't use it, I guess. And if it's confusing, don't worry too much about it.
Yeah.
What's really important is that your champions are in fact killing the monsters, or they're not.
Yeah. The main kind of purpose of that feature is just to go green when your formation's better, and to turn red and tick down when your formation's worse. And in general, it does a pretty good job of doing that. There are some edge cases to that, depending on which champions you're using. But for the most part, if it goes green
is good.
Your champions will likely be able to do more. And if it goes red, you probably just moved the wrong champion.
All right. Well, we've got time for about one more here. Justin, I hope you didn't highlight anything further down.
I have not.
All right, cool. So Emote asks, any plans to add magic or ranged-based attack tanks?
Yeah, so I highlighted this question because I wanted to talk about one of the documents that we use for champion design. It actually lists all of our champions by seat. And by event, and lists out all of their kind of roles and their race and their gender and their attack type and the patrons they're eligible for. And that's a document that we use. Once we've designed a champion, we kind of decide which seat to put it in based on sort of what is lacking in a given seat. So if there's a whole bunch of ranged champions in one seat, we will try not to put any more ranged champions into that seat. That never actually happens. I don't think there's more than 2 ranged champions in any seat. It's mostly melee, chaotic good champions that we have to try and find new ways to squeeze into seats. So anyway, it's a long way of saying one of the things that we've got on that is that we need more tanking champions in certain seats, and we need more ranged champions in certain seats. And I think there are a couple where that actually overlaps. So what that means is when we get to a place where we get to design a champion completely from scratch, where it's not going to be based off of a content creator or something, that is most likely something we will try and do. As long as we didn't just have a tanking champion the event before and aren't going to have a tanking champion the event after, in which case, But yes, that is having a nice balanced range of characters and having a little bit of everything is something that we definitely try and do. So that is definitely high on the list of champions to add.
Great. All right, so we are basically out of time. We got about a minute to go through our outro. And so
right.
Brace yourself. Here's the outro. That looks like that's it. So Justin.
Yeah, if we didn't get to your question, don't fret. You will have another opportunity. That said, we will be off the air next week.
Wait, we've been canceled?
Actually, it's just a scheduling conflict. We'll be back on June 3rd at 2 p.m. to answer more of your questions.
Ooh.
Fine.
I said few. We're good.
Oh, okay. Before we sign off, though, we would like to thank our tireless mods. TBD, who was our mod today? I think it was Jay. Thanks, Jay.
And if it was Sasha, then we apologize for that.
And if it was both of you, thanks both of you. Thanks to all of our mods.
Yes. Of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, enjoying the game, asking us such wonderful questions. Without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
Yeah, we'd have to do something else.
All right, and that is it for episode 3. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Jinx.
Oops.
That's not right.